I'd like a little preamble to thank you all for coming here this evening. I'd like to thank our speakers, some of which have traveled a long distance to come here. So, with no further ado, what I'd like to do is to start our meeting with our pledges. Pledge to the U.S. flag. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And to the Texas pledge. I honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Right now, what I'd like to do is I would like to have Tim Bork, who's our secretary, go ahead and do a prayer prior to dinner. Tim?
Almighty God, to whom we must account for all our powers and privileges, guide and direct, we humbly pray, the minds of all those who are called to elect fit persons to serve in the governing of our community, state, and nation. Grant that in the exercise of our choice, we may promote your glory and the welfare of this nation. This we ask for the sake of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.
I hate to interrupt your dinner, but in an effort to try to stay on schedule this evening, we have guests, we have speakers, we have some club business that we've got to go ahead and get together. So if you would indulge me, please, what I would like to do would be to have Ben Brown please go to our nominating committee.
Thank you, Ted. It fell my lot to be the chairman of the nominating committee this year after we approved the new bylaws. And that affects what the nominating committee had to do and what was on their plate. And so I was pleased to work with the folks you see up here, Georgina Fosack, Nancy Lewis, Richard DiVirgilio, Mike Petrick, and Bill McClure were our committee. And I appreciate their hard work and also the tips and suggestions that they received from our club members as we wrestle with who should we nominate for our slate of officers next year. And as you know, with the new bylaw change, there are officers who will be serving a one-year term, and then officers who will be serving a 2-year term in 2021, and then after that, every officer then will be up for election on a 2-year term basis. So first, our one-term nominations for treasurer. And I just preface all this. All the names I'm going to mention tonight these folks have been contacted and have agreed to serve if they're elected in our November meeting, which is what we do. We nominate in October and we elect in November. So I'm giving you the nominations from the nominating committee here tonight. So Phil LaRose is treasurer. Director of meetings is Joan Van Fleet. Director of marketing and communications Clayton Barnes, and Director of Membership is Ron Samuels. These folks have agreed to serve for 1 year if we elect them next month. For our 2-year term, the remaining officers, for President, Jack DeSimone, for Secretary, Tim Bork, for Historian Parliamentarian, which is a new position on the board, is Maureen Everett. And lastly, as Director of Legislative and Campaign Activities, I've agreed to serve another 2-year term. And so Ted and club members, these are our nominations for the nominating committee.
Thank you, Ben. I'd like to thank Ben and everybody on the nominations committee for all of their hard work. If any of you have looked through our new bylaws, one of the things that we did to be able to instrumental is that everybody in this room, I think, loves to see term limits, all right? I've had the pleasure of being able to be president of this club for 4 years. Based upon our new bylaws, each and every one of the officers can serve a maximum of 4 years term in their office. So I declined, and I appreciate, Jack has been working very, very closely with me for the last 2 years. I could say he was in training, but to be candid with you, Jack has taken up the banner and done a lot of things when I was out of town and when I was unable to fulfill my duties. So I'm sure that he will do a great job along with the other members of the office. What I would like to do at this point in time is to ask, is there any other nominations from the floor? Is there anybody in membership who would like to run for any of these offices or nominate anyone that you've spoken to about one of these offices, please? If not, I will accept the nominations from the nominating committee, and we will close nominations for the offices. Thank you very much. Right now, I would like to go ahead and ask all of our elected officials to please stand up, introduce themselves, any officials who are here. Pardon? Yeah, wait, excuse me. If you go by the doors there, please come by and introduce yourselves here on the microphones. Any of the elected officers or candidates? Yes. No, we got to come up here. Angela, you are an elected officer. Would you please come on up to the microphone and introduce yourself? Yes. And we had a small, medium, and large. And as usual for Joan, we had obviously large. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Greg Custer, my wife Julie is here with me. I'm currently your chairman for the Town Planning and Zoning Commission, and I'm running for Town Council, Seat 2. I'd appreciate your vote. Thanks a lot.
Howdy, I'm Larry Little. I'm running for Fairview Town Council, Seat 4. Let's keep Fairview great.
Good evening, I'm Pam Little, and normally I say I'm honored to represent you on the State Board of Education. I also want you to know that I am fighting for our children after the last couple of meetings.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kevin Patrick Erie. I'm one of your 9 judges on the Court of Criminal Appeals of Texas, and I'll be speaking to you again in a few minutes, so see you in a second.
Hi, I'm Justice John Brown from the 5th Court of Appeals, and you'll be hearing more from me as well, so I look forward to that. Thank you.
I came to model my new stuff. I can't wear this at the grocery store because I'm afraid I might get attacked, but I thought I would safely be able to wear it here. I'm Cynthia Brody. I'm your councilwoman for the town of Fairview. I asked for your vote. I am running for re-election, and I appreciate everyone here and what you guys do to provide us with a good base to be able to have a voice as Republicans, and thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Jeanette Grazioli. I currently serve on the Planning and Zoning Commission for the town of Fairview, and I am running for Fairview Town Council, Seat 4.
Hello, and my name is Roland Feldman. I'm one of your Fairview Town Councilmen as well, and I look forward to serving you guys again for another 2 years. Thank you.
name is London O'Dowd. I'm running for Lovejoy ISD, position 5. I will be at the very, 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 very bottom of the ballot in nonpartisan manner, but I have been endorsed by the Collin County Conservative Republicans and greatly appreciate your vote.
Good evening. I have the honor of being your mayor, Henry Lessner. Fairview is great. We're in great shape.
Walk out to go, which one is mine? You know who this one goes to.
Especially for Joe.
That's right, that's right. I'm Angela Paxton, I'm your Texas State Senator. I'm so glad to see everyone tonight. You look beautiful. How many of you have already voted?
Yeah.
Ah, that's it. Well, we've got some work to do. We'll talk about that some more tonight, but thank you so much for being such a great part of the district. Appreciate it.
And now what I'd like to do is to turn the mic over to Joan so that she can start our program this evening, please.
This is my personal microphone. Actually, we do this so we don't have to touch anything. Because, as you know, it does transmit whatever you might have, hopefully nothing. But, so the secret is don't touch anything. However, I have a magic wand. Hold on.
That's a taser.
Okay. My magic wand, I just turned it off. I'm going to weave a spell for the election. This is going to bring all the Republicans in. No, seriously, it does, you don't really transmit anything unless I were to put my droplets here and touch it. So we did it this way so nobody touches anything. But just in case, we do have this protection. And I was told we can use it when we need it. So far, we don't need it. But I want to assure you that we, in order to come into the clubhouse, we are doing everything we're supposed to do for the CDC and also for Governor Abbott. So we can continue to come inside. Thank goodness. Anyway, one more week, right? One more week. It seems like an eternity, really. And I think we can put up with it for one more week. But I sure hope that we will have a great celebration afterwards. And we're counting on it. We will have our next meeting in on November 16th. The reason why we're having all these dinners, because in order to come into the clubhouse, we have to have a dinner or a lunch. So I'm sorry that you have to keep coming in for a dinner, but it's worth coming in anyway, so here we are. Anyway, the program hopefully will be I'm just going to give you a little heads up, because we're hoping to have, it probably is on a slide, but we don't have everything confirmed. But one of the speakers will be talking about Save Our States, and that is concerning the Electoral College. You know, there's always a lot of pushback to try to do away with the Electoral College. What would happen then? You know what would happen. Some people simply wouldn't count. I think the big areas would be New York, California, and all of the Democratic areas that have a high population. But anyway, so if you want to learn about that, then do come to our November 16th meeting, and hopefully we'll have a lot to celebrate. Well, as you know, we have had a hard job coming in and doing our normal programs with forums, etc. during the summer. Ever since February, we were closed down as far as coming in here, so we did a lot. Ben Brown and his Get Out the Vote in the patio program was great. And we've had postcard writings. We've had a lot of videos and Zoom broadcasting for our members and patrons and everybody, trying to get the word out and trying to get the message out to vote and who they're voting for. So we've really tried, every member of this club has tried hard to get out the vote and will maintain this until the end. And that's why we're having our meeting tonight. I did want to highlight that you have seen 2 of our speakers that are up on the stage. There's a 4th one down on the floor. We'll talk about that later. But the 3 that are here, we have had Andrea Thompson, and she was on a virtual meeting with the district court, the judges for the district court. A great virtual meeting that I think is still on our website, right, Georgina? And I ask you to go on. You'll see a lot of the judges there. And we have had John Browning here recently with the other 2 candidates for the 5th Court of Appeals in Dallas, and you heard something of that. But we welcome them back, along with Judge Kevin Yeary, Judge Kevin Yeary, because we wanted to get someone from the Supreme Court or the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, and he'll tell you all about that. It's really very fascinating. Even though you have voted, many of you have, and I know a large number of our Heritage Ranch people have voted by now, this is not a waste, because you have relatives. I have relatives, unfortunately, a few are Democrats, and I really got a hard time on that. Being called at 7 o'clock in the morning asking me why I'm voting for Trump, that was a little too much. But anyway, we do have people, we have social media. Many of us go on social media. So if you have Facebook, Twitter, and all those other fancy other means of communication, get the word out. We're still in the race. This is not over yet. And until a week from tomorrow, we need to keep working hard at this. So right now, I'm going to ask the 3, I believe we'll take Andrea first, okay? And she will come up to one of our well-positioned microphones and speak. And let's give her a big round of applause.
I think I'll stick with this one and not Joan's mic. So thank you for having us. As Joan said, I'm Andre Thompson. I'm your judge of the 416th District Court. I'm going to keep holding this sign so everybody remembers how crucial it is to keep our Republican judges. I want to start by thanking you on behalf of all of our district court judges for having us at your patio parties. What a fantastic idea. You guys really adapted, and we were so pleased and honored to be able to come into your homes, or on your patios at least, and meet everybody that we're used to seeing at the meetings and try to get the message out. This is a critical election for us. I've had the privilege of serving you as judge of the 416th District Court for 4 years now. As many of you know, before that, I served as your district clerk in Collin County, and one of the main things that I did as district clerk was convert all of our court files to electronic records. And we went to electronic filing, and because of that, in March, when COVID hit, we didn't skip a beat. We took about a 24-hour break, and then we were right back to having all of our court hearings virtually. I can share with y'all that in February, before we really had any COVID repercussions, our 13 district courts disposed of 1,900 cases in February, 1,900 and change. This past September, we just got the data. September, we disposed virtually, by all virtual hearings, 1,900 cases. So your courts are working hard for you, but that's something that's important that differentiates us from the people running against us. They have signs, so we have trust experience, keep your Republican judges. Their signs say vote for fair judges, okay? Well, one of the things that, we kind of wonder about, what does that mean? What's a fair judge? There's a couple of things I want to talk to y'all about that. If you hear people talking about that, your friends mention, I want a fair judge. My job isn't about fairness. It's about following the law. And the law isn't necessarily completely based on fairness. It's the law as the legislature has written it. I don't decide things based on what my feelings are. I decide it based on facts. Have y'all ever heard anybody say that? Facts don't care about your feelings, right? We've all heard that before. So it's crucial that people understand what the rule of law is, and it's that exactly. It's that I don't try to decide things based on how I feel about it, or who I like more, or what seems fair in a case. I look at the facts as they're presented to me, and I apply them to the law as it's written by our legislature. That's the job. It's pretty simple. But when we start talking about fairness, that's when you get into hearing about judges that legislate from the bench. That's because they're making decisions based on how they feel and not what the law is. And that's exactly what the folks running against us are telling you they want to do when they say vote for fairness and have fair judges. Now that doesn't mean I don't have empathy for the people that come in front of me. I remember every day that I'm seeing most of the folks in front of me on the worst day of their life. They're having trouble with their business, they're having trouble with their family, maybe something's happened with one of their kids, they've been a victim of crime, they've been involved in that somehow. So we have to have empathy and understand where the people in front of us are coming from, but we still have to look at the facts and follow the law. The other place that fairness keeps coming up from our opposition that seems kind of strange to me is in the idea of how to manage the courts. So for y'all, you just heard, we have to hear about 1,900 cases a year to keep up. Through the course of a year, I'll hear 21 to 2,300 cases come through my court. All 13 of us do. We have some of the highest volume courts in the entire state of Texas. So based on our population and the number of cases, our 13 district courts have to dispose on average of 9 cases every day. And we have to do that every day because next year, guess what? 2,200 more cases are coming right at me. So what we do to handle that volume is things like I just talked about. Electronic records. We try to do things as efficiently and effectively as we can. We rely on alternative dispute resolution methods, so mediation, arbitration, something called a summary jury trial, where we have kind of a little miniature trial with actual jurors and let the jurors tell the attorneys, hey, if we had a big long trial, here's what we think would happen, but we do that in an afternoon. And then we split them into 2 jury pools, they bring a verdict back, and inevitably those 2 separate little jury pools of 7 people come back with a very, very similar verdict after hearing their best case laid out for them in an afternoon. And then the next day, the lawyers go to mediation. So if you want to have a trial that's going to take longer than 3 days in Collin County, we send you to a very special kind of alternative dispute resolution called that summary jury trial. And I have yet to have one of those not succeed in settling the case because you have 2 independent jury groups telling the lawyers, on your best day, I heard the best case you have, and here's what I think your case is worth. Sometimes it's 0, sometimes it's the number they like, and they go to mediation the next day and it settles the case. But if we didn't use smart alternative dispute resolution methods, we'd never get through those 2,100 cases a year. Something else we have to do is reasonable docketing control measures that sometimes involve time limits. So we can't give you unlimited time, as much as I would like to do that. Now, as a practicing attorney, I liked the time limits in Collin County because it helped me focus my client. So it's not always effective, for instance, in maybe a divorce case where custody is an issue, to have your parents come in and say, you're a really fantastic mom. I'm generally going to think your mom thinks you're a good mom. So that's not always helpful, even though our clients sometimes, as when we're attorneys, really, really want to have their family members and their, friends from Sunday school get up and talk about what a great parent they are. But that's not always what's helpful to the court. So when we have those time limits, it allows the attorney to tell their client, we've got to really focus our case and talk about what's crucial to the facts of the case. But that's one of the only ways we're able to get through the volume that we have. Our opponents are saying what's fair is to give everyone unlimited time. Well, if you have unlimited time, and I've got to handle 9 cases every single day, if I even double the amount of time I give everybody, then I'll see you in 2 years. If I give you a little bit more time than that, then I'll see you in 3 years. I think it's unfair to make people wait years to have resolution in their case. We think solving disputes for people is the best way to let them move on with their lives. And so we have reasonable time limits. And that's what's fair, is giving people the resolution that they need to move on with their lives. Now, the place they're getting a lot of these ideas is from Dallas. Most of the people running against us are practicing attorneys in Dallas. They don't practice in our Collin County courts. And I don't know about you guys, but I moved to Collin County for a reason. I don't live in Dallas for a reason. So we've all heard that, right? Don't California or Texas? Well, don't Dallas my courthouse. So we appreciate y'all. We appreciate the work that you're doing. We need you to spread the word. It doesn't matter what our fantastic senator does for us if your judges won't uphold those laws that they're writing. It doesn't matter if you back the blue, if your judges don't follow up when it comes to the courthouse. It's crucial that your DAs and your sheriffs and your judges and everybody that's at the bottom of the ballot that often gets forgotten does their job. Because it doesn't matter what happens at the top of the ticket if the bottom of the ticket is not standing up for you. So thank you for everything that you're doing. Keep your Republican judges, and let's finish this.
I will not be using Judge Thompson's microphone. I'm lucky I'm not using that microphone. So a couple things to echo what Joan said before about this game is not over. Some great numbers, right? About 55% of Collin County registered voters have voted going into today. That's with still 5 more days of early voting plus election day. In my home county, Rockwell County, we're about 53%, so we're trying to catch up. The Texas Secretary of State is reporting that 43.5% of registered voters have already voted. That is a total of 7,376,276 people. Now, to put this into perspective, in 2016, 8,969,226 individuals voted. We are 82% of the way towards matching the entire total of 2016. Okay? And that's with 5 more days of early voting plus, election day itself. Phenomenal turnout, but we need it to be phenomenal, and I am uniquely qualified to tell you why. Because in 2018, what was an all-Republican court for well over 20 years, I mean, the last Democrat on that court had been put there by Ann Richards, became overnight Democrat-controlled. And that happened to all of our intermediate appellate courts are in major urban areas throughout the state. Overnight, we lost control of Dallas, the 2 appellate courts in Houston, the Court of Appeals in Austin, San Antonio. Chief Justice Nathan Hecht of the Texas Supreme Court talked to me a few days after, and he said, John, we lost 7 centuries of judicial experience in one night. I mean, that is ridiculous. And prior to the 2018 election, which was kind of a perfect storm, right? We had the Beto blue wave effect, we had straight ticket voting, and the combination of that, the Democrat vote at Dallas County was simply too much. We had lesser Republican turnout in Collin County than we'd had traditionally. I mean, in 2014, it had been 68-point-something% for the previous Court of Appeals candidate, one of my good friends, Craig Stoddard, had won with 68-point-something% of the Republican vote. The Republican vote in 2018 was about 58%. So that drop, and Republicans, good Republicans, staying home or staying on the sidelines, did us in. And Collin County had traditionally been a firewall, if you will, for our court to balance out that Democrat vote coming out of Dallas County. Now, why are appellate courts so important? Well, I'm going to give you some examples. You're going to hear one example tonight on the news when you hear about, hopefully, soon-to-be Justice Amy Coney Barrett getting confirmed. Judge Barrett happens to be a friend of mine, and you can go to my campaign Facebook page, see a picture of us a couple of years ago in 2018 before the election. She was in Dallas. We're both members of a group of conservative Catholic lawyers and judges called the St. Thomas More Society. And she had already been put on President Trump's short list. She had recently been confirmed to the 7th Circuit, where she sits now. And I said, won't it be great if, you know, in the not too distant future, we're calling you Justice Amy Coney Barrett? And she said, John, won't it be nice if we're also calling you Justice Browning? Well, half of that came true, and it looks like the other half is coming true tonight. But unlike her, I don't get a lifetime appointment, so we need the help, okay, for more days. Now, you don't need to look any further than the headlines, than the evening news, to see the importance of our appellate courts. Case in point, Governor Abbott issued an order about restricting the one mail-in ballot collection spot per county, and an activist trial judge in Travis County said, no, we're not going to do that. You know, that's unconstitutional. We're going to have a lot more than that. And then it went up to an appellate court in Austin, and they agreed with the trial judge. Just in the last day or so, the Texas Supreme Court said, no, I think we're going to follow the law and follow the governor's order, and it's back to what the governor ordered. That is an example of an appellate court stepping in and preventing that kind of judicial activism. We've seen it elsewhere during this election cycle, with a single judge, like an Obama appointee, saying, you know what, mail-in ballots for everybody, right? We don't care what the law says about having to qualify under certain exemptions set forth in the law, in the statute. Forget about the law. We're going to let everybody do it, the way the Harris County District Clerk wanted. Well, that federal judge was overruled when it went up to our more conservative 5th Circuit Court of Appeals and said, no, we're going to follow the law here. That is what the importance of the appellate courts is. It's to rein in that kind of judicial activism. Now, before I was appointed to the court by Governor Abbott, for 31 years I handled trials and appeals throughout the state. And in Dallas County, I got used to hearing from some of these judges, well, Mr. Browning, yes, you're correct. That is what the law says. But we're not going to grant your motion because I don't like that law, or I don't agree with that law. Now, prior to 2018, I always took some comfort in the fact that we had a good, conservative, all-Republican Court of Appeals that would undo that kind of mistake. Well, we don't really have that anymore. And I've gotten a first-hand view as one of the only 5 Republican justices remaining, when we are regularly outnumbered and I have to convince the 2 Democrat judges that I sit with on the panel to please follow the law. You know, when I tell them, look, you know, my position here, you know, I'm ruling this way, I think you should agree with me because that's what the statute says. That's what the plain meaning of the law is. Sometimes I can convince them, sometimes I'm outnumbered, 2 to 1, and I'm writing a dissent. Now, there are 3 of us that are up this year, Justice Bill Whitehill, and Justice David Evans. They are outstanding justices. To know the difference between your Republican candidates and the Democrats who are running against us, all 3 of whom are sitting Dallas County trial judges, you only need to look at the experience and the qualifications. All 3 of us, besides actually serving as appellate justices prior to getting on the court, handled appellate cases. That's what we did for the majority of our time as practicing attorneys. The 3 Democrat contenders, virtually no appellate experience. Now, I can tell you, even as someone very seasoned as an appellate lawyer, it's still like drinking from a fire hose when you get on that court. It's not an easy job, and I'm glad that I had that appellate background. It's also a background that requires a lot of writing, because that's what we do. We review the record of a case, the briefs that attorneys file, and we write opinions, applying the law to the facts of that situation. We don't hear from witnesses, we don't take evidence. That's what we do. We research and we write opinions, stating what the law is as applied to those facts. So you have to be able to write. And You know, I come from a writing background, my fellow justices do as well, and trial judges in Texas, they do great work, don't get me wrong, but their work doesn't involve writing opinions. So they don't have that skill set for a very necessary part of this job. Now, this, you've heard this before, but I'll just, re-emphasize, this is the biggest and busiest appellate court in Texas. There are about 10,000 appeals that are filed every year. We hear all the appeals that come from all the trial courts in 6 counties: Collin, Dallas, Rockwall, Hunt County, Grayson County, and Coffee County. Out of those 10,000 a year statewide, we hear nearly 2,000, so about a fifth. We are very, very busy. And if you think that you don't have to worry about the Democrat-controlled 5th Court of Appeals getting something wrong and leaving up to the Texas Supreme Court, or perhaps the Court of Criminal Appeals, where Judge Erie sits, can get it right, the fact is they don't take that many cases. They take about 100 cases a year. And so, for all practical purposes, we are the court of last resort. So it is critical that we have these good, well-qualified, conservative voices on your 5th Court of Appeals. I'm John Browning, running for 5th Court of Appeals. Please help me keep my job. My wife likes me being gainfully employed. I left a far better paying job in private practice with a big law firm, and she was very patient with me about doing that. So please, don't prove me wrong. Thank you very much for all of your support. I love coming back here, and look forward to the rest of it.
Well, before I begin, I want to tell you I just got a text message from one of my good friends in San Antonio who tells me that Amy Coney Barrett just got 52 votes for the Senate. She's confirmed. And I also hear that she's going to be sworn in at 9 p.m. by my personal favorite U.S. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. So if that doesn't send a signal, I think, I don't know what we're looking for. Wow, that's great. I just feel really good right now because I feel like the law, something good is going to happen in the law, because so much depends upon what happens in our high courts. Because, once a high court has made a decision in our system, we respect that. That's something, it's a very American way of doing things. And so one of the things that's troubled me over the course of my career has been to see the U.S. Supreme Court make decisions that I just knew weren't right, And nevertheless, our system counsels us that the judges that are sort of lower in the hierarchy of things are required to respect and give deference to those decisions made by the higher courts. And it's terribly important that they do that, otherwise we'll have an anarchy in our judicial system. You can't have a system that runs that way. So let me just begin. I'm going to tell you tonight, because how many of you, did I speak to any of you? I was here a few weeks ago and went and did some of those porch meetings. So some of you may have seen me then, but many of you maybe haven't. And so I wanted to just give you an opportunity to know a little bit about who one of your 9 judges on the Court of Criminal Appeals is, and then I'll tell you about the court, and then I'll tell you a little bit about politics. That's kind of how I normally explain these things. So my name is Kevin Patrick Erie. I grew up in Laredo, Texas. I was born in Cotulla, but raised in Laredo. My parents were born and raised in Laredo, Texas. We're South Texas people for generations and generations. And when I graduated from high school, I went up the road a couple of hours to San Antonio and attended college at St. Mary's University. I stayed on for an extra 3 years to get a law degree, and then was fortunate to be selected by one of the then serving judges on our Court of Criminal Appeals to be his law clerk. So I did that for a year. It's kind of an honor to get that opportunity. So I did that. And then I went and pursued what, in my mind, I thought was going to be the path of my career, which was civil litigation. I joined a private law firm in San Antonio and had a lot of my friends in San Antonio who'd gone to law school with me call me and say, well, you worked at the Court of Criminal Appeals. What do you think about this case that I have? And so I began to become involved in some of those criminal cases. And pretty soon I was developing some clients of my own and handling some appeals on behalf of those clients. And about 3 years into that firm, working at that firm, I began to know in my heart that I was in the wrong place. And God had showed me where the right place was for me by giving me that opportunity to be a law clerk at the Court of Criminal Appeals. I found I had a talent for appellate work, and I enjoyed criminal law much more than I did arguing with some plaintiff's attorney about whether his client had slipped on the grape or sat down next to the grape. So anyway, I was hired. Again, fortune came my way. You might call it divine providence intervening. But I was hired by the Dallas District Attorney's Office in 1995 to work in their appellate division, which is a group of lawyers in that office who spend the vast majority of their time practicing in the appellate courts of the state on behalf of the state in those courts, including in front of the Court of Criminal Appeals. I worked there for a while until I decided to marry my wife, Susie. She's a pediatrician, and she was in training in Houston. So I moved to the Harris County District Attorney's Office and worked in their appellate division for a while my wife finished her training. And then when she finished her training, we looked at where we wanted her to start her practice and decided San Antonio would be the best place to do that because her parents lived there, and I had 3 sisters who were raising children in San Antonio to raise our kids around family. So we moved there. Pretty soon I was in the Bexar County DA's office working in their appellate division. And I stayed there for about another 17 years until 2014, when 3 of the judges on the Court of Criminal Appeals all decided they were not going to run for re-election. So this was, you can call it either a crisis or an opportunity, right? A crisis in the sense that if the wrong people were to have assumed the office of judge on the Court of Criminal Appeals, we could get some terrible decisions out of that court and cause some disruptions in our criminal justice system. On the other hand, I had just spent 24 years working in the Court of Criminal Appeals as a defense attorney in front of the Court of Criminal Appeals and as a prosecutor for 20 years in front of the Court of Criminal Appeals. So I was ready to do the job. I mean, my qualifications were there. And so I called a buddy of mine. I didn't know anything about politics, but I called this pal who had worked at that time for at least one governor and at least one United States senator. And so he knew a little bit about politics. And so I met him. I remember in a hotel bar, we had a beer, and I brought my resume and I said, look at my resume. If anybody's qualified for this job, it's me. And he very frankly looked at me in the eyes and he said, yeah, but Kevin, the qualified guy doesn't win. So anyway, I then began to seek his advice some more and other people's advice and figured out how to be the guy that won. And I joined the race and was fortunate, and now I'm one of your judges on the court. So that's just my story, right? But the Court of Criminal Appeals is something that I'm sure some of you in the room are still wondering, what is it, you know? Well, Texas is a unique place. We have 2 Supreme Courts. We've been that way since the 1800s. And unfortunately, it's not taught enough in our high schools and in our middle schools. 7th grade history classes where people usually get a taste of it. But the fact is, we have one Supreme Court called the Supreme Court of Texas. Their only jurisdiction is civil cases, which means they deal with contract disputes, personal injury matters, family law, things of that nature. But they don't have any authority at all to decide criminal cases. So we have another court called the Court of Criminal Appeals. We work in the same building with the judges on the Texas Supreme Court. We just do different work. We hear murders, kidnappings, burglaries, all of the heinous criminal things that happen in the state. Our court is the court of last resort for any of those cases. So either if the defendant or if the government wants to challenge something that's happened in either the trial court or in the Court of Appeals and hope to have that overturned, our court is the last court in Texas who can have a say over that matter if it's a criminal case. Beyond us, the only opportunity would be to go to the United States Supreme Court, where Justice Barrett is now going to be sitting after 9 p.m. tonight. I have to say that because I just learned it. It's wonderful. Anyway, so the court is a terribly important place. We do a lot of really varied and different work. We're widely regarded as either the busiest or at least one of the busiest appellate courts in the nation because we decide anywhere between 5,000 and 8,000 cases a year. There are 9 judges, think of it. 9 judges are hearing between 5,000 and 8,000 cases a year. And historically, there have been years when it was even more than that. Is that my time is up? Anyway, so So we have three main areas of work that we do. The first is our discretionary jurisdiction, and that's Justice Browning just told you that our court reviews the decisions of the intermediate courts of appeals. There's 14 of those throughout the state. He works on the 5th Court of Appeals, but we have 14 courts of appeals. Each of those has a number. So the 13th court is in Corpus Christi, the 4th court is in San Antonio, the 8th court is in El Paso, and on and on. And each one of those appellate courts serves a different region of the state. Now, what happens from time to time is that, the 5th Court of Appeals will decide that some law is unconstitutional. Well, then you have the San Antonio Court of Appeals saying, well, no, it's not. And now you've got a discrepancy in the state, and somebody's got to resolve that. So that's why we have high courts to do that, right? To resolve those discrepancies, to settle that question so that the law is being applied equally and evenly all throughout the state. The same thing works at the U.S. Supreme Court level. They solve those problems that are created by the intermediate courts of appeals in the federal system, deciding questions differently. And also they decide important questions of constitutional magnitude, right? So we're the court of last resort. So if a court decides that a law is unconstitutional, we're likely to want to have a say at that because, after all, we're the ones who say statewide whether or not laws are constitutional. And you want to have the right kinds of judges doing that. I remember one of the guys who I sought a lot of advice from when I was running the first time told me that, if you have judges who are too inclined to find laws unconstitutional, then you can have great legislators out there passing wonderful laws to serve the community, but it's like having a bucket, you're filling it up with water, and you got a hole in the bottom of it, because all the laws keep running out the bottom. The courts keep destroying every piece of good work that you create. And that is not something that, if every one of those laws was truly unconstitutional, well then that would be the right thing to have happen, right? But hopefully the legislators are not doing that. They're paying attention to the Constitution just like we do, just like the governor does. Everybody has the same responsibility. We all take the same oath to uphold the Constitution and laws of this state and of the United States. And so we ought to have respect for the work of the other branches of government in the judicial department. And that's something that if you ask me if I have a platform, right, I write on my push cards this quote from me, which is, the laws should be written by the legislature, not by the courts. And I find that to be one of the driving things about me as a judge. And when you become a judge, particularly one on a high court, something called judicial philosophy becomes terribly important to you. Because if you don't want to just decide every case based upon where your heart is calling you, what do I want the outcome to be, then you've got to have some sort of guiding principles to help you figure out how to get there. My guiding principle begins with the principle that I don't write the law. So if you look at all the qualifications I have to do the job that I'm doing for you, the clerking at the court, the defense attorney time, the prosecutor time, all of that is great qualifications. But my most important qualification to continue to do this job is that I know who writes the law, and I know it's not me, right? So, as I mentioned before, I'm married to Susie. We have 4 daughters, so pray for us. Don't worry too much, though. God did, He has a way of preparing us for things. And so preparing me for the 4 daughters, He gave me 4 sisters first. So we're doing okay. Our girls are great. But we look at this world that they're growing up into, and we have worries and concerns, and we try not to let those drag us down. We just face every day the best we can. And so one of the things that's happening to me right now is I'm running for re-election, and my kids are saying, well, Dad, you're never home anymore. And boy, I am so looking forward to November the 4th, because I've been on the road. I probably have driven in the neighborhood of 40 to 50,000 miles during this particular re-election cycle, and it gets old. Thankfully, I've got cousins and friends all over the state, and I've got hotels. My wife's now saying, you need to stay rather than drive home. So I'm staying rather than drive home a lot of times. But the re-election process is tough. And it's tough because, at least for us on the Court of Criminal Appeals, because we don't raise Texas Supreme Court money to run for the Court of Criminal Appeals. And by the way, that's not an ask. I'm not asking anybody to go donate to Kevin Urich right now. We're almost done, frankly. But what I'm trying to say is that because of that, we have to do things differently that means that the Supreme Court judges are gonna, pretty soon you're gonna see all of their faces on television, you're gonna hear their voices on the radio. But one of the things that we do in order to campaign is we run around and meet you all, right? And so I'm here tonight because Joan called me. Where's Joan? Raise your hand. There she is. Joan reached out, she said, can you come? And frankly, I was thinking, well, gosh, we've got the court conferences every Monday morning at about 9 o'clock. And I feel like I've really gone over my time, so forgive me if I'm boring you to death. But every morning at 9 o'clock, every Monday morning at 9 o'clock, the judges of the Court of Criminal Appeals get together and talk about our cases. And that's a very important time for us. It's when we get to address one another about our thoughts about these important cases that we get there. And so, you know, they can typically last anywhere from until about 11 o'clock or until sometimes 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And so I was worried when Joan asked, hey, can you come up, that I might not be able to make it on time. And I didn't want to do that. But finally I decided I'd work it out if I had to. And I just said, I'm coming because y'all want to hear from me and I want to speak to you. And so I'm here to say, all of you, many of you have voted, right? I saw your hands go up. Your work is not done, okay? If you want to win, then you can't just show up yourself. You've got to work like it's an army, okay? The other side is working like it's an army. There are people on the ground who are going to people's houses, knocking on their doors, saying, come on out here, let me get you in my car. I'm going to drive you down to the polling location. They are doing that. And so I will say, and I say this to a lot of groups, and I don't mean this to be in a bad way, but coming to a meeting like this is great. But you can't just come to a meeting like this and then go home and then vote yourself. You really need to reach out to the people that you know and work on them and talk to them. And so social media is terribly important. And you know, you can not only share things, you can ask them to like and share things and push and push and push. Because I can only push so far. I can only speak to you and you and you, and then I need you, the 3 or 4 or 50 of you, to talk to your friends too. And if you don't, the consequences are, you might not have me on the Court of Criminal Appeals. And I'll tell you, this is a tough year. We have every statewide elected official who's on the ballot has a Democrat opponent, okay? That hasn't happened in a while in Texas, so they're feeling very confident to have done that. Not only that, but the judges they put up against us, they're paper qualified to do the job. But I'm telling you, they're going to be very different judges than the judges you have now. The judges you have now, so here's a great example. How many of you in this room, and I don't expect many hands to go up, but how many read the Dallas Morning News? Okay, right? Some, right? So they're not exactly known for their conservative credentials over there, right? So this year, though, they offered an opportunity to interview all of the candidates for the Court of Criminal Appeals. They interviewed myself and the other Republican judges as well as our opponents. And at the end of the day, they endorsed the Republican candidates, the Dallas Morning News did. And just to give you an example, in my particular opponent, one of the quotes from the editorial was, she is the epitome, this is a quote, the epitome of an activist judge. So somebody, you know, they recognize that the judges that are trying to take your current judges off the court are people who really don't understand the difference between writing laws and enforcing laws, right, in judicial cases. So it's terribly important that you think about that and that when you go home, you realize that you're not done and that you have a lot of work to do. We all have a lot of work to do, myself included, which to me was driving up here tonight to see you. And I'm also, like you, talking to my family and friends. And every once in a while I get these little glimmers of hope, right? Because I get these text messages, Facebook messages, hey, just voted for you, just voted for you. And it's like these little things that lift my heart and make me feel excited that maybe it's going to work out. I'm trusting God, but you know, I read the book of Job, okay? I know there are times when He doesn't give you what you're asking for. I'm hoping this is one of the times when He does give us what we're asking for, but in the event He's got another plan, I know His answer, right? And His answer is, we're all in His hands, and He knows what He's doing, okay? So, I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you all tonight. My name is Kevin Patrick Geary. There are 2 other judges who are also Republicans and trying to keep their seats on the Court of Criminal Appeals. I can't endorse them because I'm a judge, but I can tell you, one of them is named David Newell, right? Newell. The other one is named Burt Richardson, okay? And those guys are your Republican candidates along with Kevin Patrick Geary for the Court of Criminal Appeals. On the Supreme Court, you have Nathan Hecht, Jeff Boyd, Jane Bland, and Brett Busby, who are all up. Normally, since we all have 6-year terms, there's 3 judges from each court in a cycle, but this year there's 4 on the Supreme Court because one of the judges was appointed to fulfill an unexpired term. So you have 4 of them this time. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. Please vote, and please encourage everybody you know to do the same. God bless you.
Well, you heard something repeated time and again about the importance of what happened in 2018. And I mentioned that in the previous meeting, that I was appalled to see all those 8 Democrat justices be in the 5th Court of Appeals in Dallas, and they were all strictly X'd out by the Dallas Morning News because they weren't qualified. Now, how did that happen? Because the Republicans didn't come out and the Democrats came out in force. Don't let that happen again. And tell all of your friends and Democrat relatives and everybody, at least I know they're hard to move, but at least those that are sitting on the fence. There was another thing that I thought of. I have a good friend who was working in the Dallas judicial system. And she transferred to Collin County about a year and a half ago. And she told me, I said, how do you like it? Or what do you know, I didn't know what she'd say. She said, there's such a noticeable difference the way they do their work in Dallas County as opposed to Collin. And obviously because the judges are all Democrat and they follow their own way of doing things. And they certainly don't follow the law. So that was an extra push for this. Well, we finally have our last guest, but before she comes up to the podium, where you have a choice of microphones, and I have my nice cleaner here, so I'll fix it up for you, whatever you choose. But I'd like to say a few words about Senator Angela Paxton. 2 years ago, she ran for the Senate in Texas. It was marvelous. She put up a good campaign. And I have to say, I have your sign in my garage still, and I'm waiting to take it out in 2 years for your re-election. So you keep doing what you're doing. But a few words. Many of us know Senator Paxton because she's been here a number of times when she was running and in between. And she's certainly visible. In fact, the last time I saw her here was for the Patriots golf tournament. And she and the Attorney General, her husband, Ken Paxton, they were, I guess you played along, right? I didn't see you after we communicated, but we were all scattered out. So she does come, and certainly she's very visible. She sends out her communication. But a couple of things. I wrote a little cheat sheet, so I couldn't remember everything that I wanted to say. But she was elected in 2018, and as all of you, or most of you, many of you know, the legislature in Texas meets every 2 years. So she has made some sizable contributions in the, I guess it was the 86th legislature, the previous one. And a couple of things. She has, I think, authored, don't quote me on this, but she was directly involved in the Texas property tax reform. Am I correct on that? Yes. And the human trafficking, one of the human trafficking. You also supported the HB3 overhaul of school finance. That's a big one. So she, the first session, she really delved right into that. And I'm sure she was placed on some valuable committees to accomplish the job as well. She came to the job with a background in education. And there are not many educators in the state legislature. I think that's why they need some help, maybe, right? So she has a lot to contribute. But she also has some background in technology and in small business. But more than anything else, her character, her dedication is something unbelievable. So I would call her the most dynamic and dedicated senator that we could ever have placed in Austin. Come on up here, Angela Paxton.
And I was thinking I could take it out since I'm
Yeah,
the
you
last
can,
one up
but
here.
let's handle
I'm just
it.
gonna taste it.
They told me to go all around and in and out, so nobody can say we were breaking the rules, right? Okay, you can take it away. You can walk all around the room.
I can
Everyone.
do whatever I need to do here. Well, thank you so much, Joan. I love to come to Heritage Ranch for so many reasons, but one is because if you ever have the chance to have Joan do an introduction like that for you, wouldn't you come just anytime she asks you to? Thank you, Joan. You know, I remember when I was running, I talked with Joan and she said, I felt good, she said, "You will carry Heritage Ranch." And I'm like, if I carry Heritage Ranch, then I will win. Because I know the road to victory always runs right through the middle of Heritage Ranch. So thank you so much. And Judge Erie, are you still here? Yes, I wanted to mention you talked about the Dallas Morning News and whether people watch that. How many of you remember Zig Ziglar? Okay. So Zig Ziglar, of course, is from the Dallas area, but I know I heard him say a number of times that every morning when he got up, before he started his day, he always began by praying and reading his Bible, and then he would read the Dallas Morning News to see what the other side was up to. So I do want to begin with just a personal note to everyone. Thank you so much. So many of you have conveyed your condolences to our family. Many of you have heard that my husband Ken's mother passed away. I guess expectedly, unexpectedly, death is like that, isn't it? It doesn't matter how much you know it's coming. His mother Sally, a firecracker, a spunky woman, just had her kind of her essence just stolen away over a long, slow spiral with Alzheimer's. And I know any of you who have experience watching that understand what I'm talking about. But so she is with the Lord, and it is a release for her. But we are also sad. And both of my parents are in heaven, and Ken was a tremendous comfort to me walking through that with me. And I'm honored to be with him and walk hand in hand with him as he walks through this. But we thank you for your prayers as we go through that this weekend. And all of our kids are coming back. We'll all be in Oklahoma next week for that. And our daughter Abby is in Afghanistan right now and isn't able to get back. But we're going to, the miracle of technology, she's going to join us that way. So anyway, but thank you all so much for your prayers and your continued love and care that way. Really appreciate it. As we had this opportunity, first of all, I'm proud to say I voted for all of these folks. Okay? And proud to do it. Proud to do it. What really is on the ballot right now in Texas and all across this country is the rule of law. I don't think it could be said any more succinctly than that. The rule of law. And what does that mean? The rule of law really is, when it comes down to it, our Constitution and the structure of our government. Our Constitution and the structure of our government. And all three of these fantastic jurists talked about this, that the legislature writes the laws. That's what I've been elected to do. That's my role. It is my role to directly hear from you about what the law should be. And sometimes we pass laws and you're like, that is a stupid law. You know what? I may have thought that myself a few times. In fact, and Della Bryant, wave Della, wave at everybody. Della is my district director here, you guys know her. She is the left half of my brain as well, and I'm just so thankful for her. But she's heard me say this over and over again. Something will happen and I will say, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I have heard a lot of dumb things. I taught middle school, okay? But that was great preparation for politics, I will tell you that. And you know what? Sometimes we miss the mark. Sometimes we put something in place, or something has been in place, and it just no longer reflects what works, what helps lift people up. And so sometimes the law needs to be changed. Sometimes the law needs to be abolished. In fact, there are times when we even decide that we think something in the Constitution itself does not reflect what ought to be. We amend the Constitution every 2 years in Texas. In fact, one of the things I was proud to be part of in the last legislative session was the constitutional amendment to prohibit a state income tax in Texas. And I know that was something that my district wants. So by law, we already had, there shall be no income tax in Texas. It's Texas, not taxes, right? Okay, don't switch the A and the E. But we strengthened that, thinking about a future where we might not have a legislature that is as fiscally conservative as we are now. And so to overturn a constitutional amendment, it can be done, but it takes a lot more. So we did that as kind of what we call belt and suspenders. Put a little bit of extra protection there to safeguard something that we know is important to Texans. But it's also true in the United States Constitution. We've amended our Constitution. We determined at a certain point that slavery was wrong. And we amended our Constitution. We determined at a certain point that half the population, the ones that give birth to all of the other parts of the population, should have the right to vote. And we amended our Constitution. In fact, this is the 100th year of women having the right to vote. So even in our Constitution, we have built in mechanisms so that we can change things. It's part of the beauty of our system of government. But when the law exists, the law is the law. And sometimes it is in a time like this, during COVID, one of the things we've looked at, and I think you're going to see in the next legislative session, is that the power of executive order, which was designed for natural disasters, emergency powers that we give our governor. we never imagined, we had never even come to any sort of a thought of a pandemic. And so I think one of the things we're going to see in the next legislative session is some adjustment to how executive orders happen, how long they're in effect, all those sorts of things, because we've had this experience. There was no reason to do it before. But I wonder, if you think about this, imagine the division we've seen, even within the Republican Party, with a Republican governor. Is that fair? And some people are very happy, some people are very unhappy. But let me ask you this. What if we have a governor who is a Democrat? And they say, you know what? I think this is an emergency. This is a disaster. Whatever they deem it. And so I think that what we will see in the next legislative session as a result of our experience is, you know what? Our Constitution and our laws weren't built with this in mind. We need to look at this. We have a mechanism in order that we can change things. But the law is the law. The law is the law. And the rule of law is what sets us apart as a nation. The rule of law is the reason that we can say in our Pledge of Allegiance, justice for all, liberty, and justice for all, because of the rule of law. And it's the role of the legislature to make those laws and to listen to the people who have elected those members. For me to listen to you, and when you say, this needs to change, we need to add this, we need to get rid of this. That's my job. And then in the executive branch, it's the executive branch's role to execute those laws. And it is the judicial role to interpret those laws. And they do that in the courts by applying the law as people bring their cases before them. When people go to court, that's what they're saying is, what does the law say? We have an argument. We have a dispute. What does the law say? Not what does the judge say? And this is what is on the ballot. Now raise your hand again if you voted already. Good job. Still time, right? Still time. And you must be present to win, right? You have to vote. You have to vote. And you know, one of the things that I think about as we have so much that's already happened. Justice Browning, where are you? There you are. Oh, you're my table member. I remember that. I told you I voted for you, right? Did I mention that? So we're 85% of the way to the total vote 2 years back. He always has great statistics. Well, part of that is because we've got more Texans than we used to have. And you know, it's interesting. I was talking with someone who's been analyzing the data, the Collin County data. You know, we joke a lot about the Californians coming in and bringing in a lot of liberal ideas. But do you know that the liberal vote, you know where it's more likely to come from? In Collin County. It's more likely to come from Dallas County than California. The people moving in. The Californians, more or less, tend to be more conservative Californians. That's why part of why they wanted to come to Texas. Now, I want to ask one other question. Now, I'm a native Texan. I was born in New Braunfels, Texas. But I married someone who got here as fast as he could. All right? So he was born in Minot, North Dakota. His dad was in the Air Force. They moved around a lot, and he came here for college, and I didn't let him leave. So, how many of you, any native Texans in the room? Okay, we've got some. And some are so proud they're standing. Good job. Okay, that's too much. Okay. That's too much. So most of you came here from somewhere else. Raise your hand if you came here from somewhere else. I'll let you. There you go. I mean, there's only two choices, right? You're either here or you came from somewhere else, right? So the reason you came to Texas,
I was made.
made to come. Well, that was a good made to come. But there's a reason we came here. And there's a reason the state needs you. I'm so glad you're here. And I know you're glad you're here because you stayed. You found Heritage Ranch, right? Who wouldn't stay? But you know, things can change on a dime if we don't stick with it. And as a case in point, how many of you have been watching the World Series? Okay? Some of you? Okay. Game 4. Okay, anybody? Okay. So we went to Game 4. So the Dodgers were ahead. I think it was, and I have no dog in the hunt because it's the Dodgers and the Rays, Tampa Bay. So I have no dog in the hunt. So I just like a good game for this, right? And so we're watching this game, and it gets down to the 9th inning. It's the bottom of the 9th inning. The Dodgers are ahead, I believe it was 7-6. 2 outs, full count. I believe 2 on base. And there is, I think the batter fouled, a couple of times, and he's hanging in there, full count. Very exciting. Winning run is on first base. And the batter hits the ball into, I think it was left field. And so the fielder throws it in. He doesn't throw it to home plate, but the runner scores, the first runner scores. And then the runner who was on first is rounding third. And then all of a sudden, so the guy throwing it in, he throws it into the infield, not all the way to home plate, which could be considered, I don't know, not technically maybe an error, but he should have gotten it into home plate, right? An error in judgment. There we go. So this guy, the guy in the infield then turns, and the winning run is now rounding third. And the infielder throws the ball to the catcher, and as he's throwing it, who knows what? It was a Rosarena, right? Randy Rosarena, like the Macarena. That's how I remember. Okay. Who knows? Remember what happened as Randy Rosarena is rounding third? What happens? He tripped. He trips and falls as the ball is being thrown to the catcher, and the catcher catches the ball and does this. There's no runner there because he fell down, and then the ball, he just muffs it. It like goes out, and the runner gets up. He's like crawling his way to home plate, and he gets there just in time, and the catcher's still trying to find the ball. It was the weirdest ending in the whole series. I mean, they've said it'll be a classic forever and ever. So they win 8-7. Win 8-7. And you think about how many things, like nothing went perfectly. It didn't go perfectly for either team. And my point is, I don't know who the Rangers are, and I'm the Rangers. I'm sorry. It's just my inner Ranger, I guess. The Dodgers, the Rays, the Republicans, the Democrats. All kinds of things can go back and forth. You don't know how it ends up unless you just keep going every last minute. And this is what Justice Uri Judge Uri, you were saying. It's not just you. Almost all of you have already voted. And I need you to think about yourself as the stone with the ripples in the pond. You've done your part, but now it's up to your influence. And our influence is about 3 N's. Influence. It is about now. And you've done your now. You showed up. Part of your now is also, who do you know? Who's in your family that's conservative, that's a Republican voter, that you haven't touched base with? I was talking to one of my daughters yesterday, and I said, have you voted yet? Because it just occurred to me, she lives in Killeen now, she just got married. She's very pregnant too. I'm very proud to say December 11th we have our little grandson coming, so it's exciting. COVID's been good to us that way. But I said, have you voted yet? And she said, no, I forgot to do my absentee. I'm like, I sent you that thing, I texted it to you and everything. She's like, Mom, I'm so sorry. Anyway, she told me yesterday, she goes, we're going to come up early, so they're coming up to go to the funeral. We're all driving up together. And she said, we're going to come up early so I can go vote. And so, but if I hadn't reminded her, I don't know that she would have remembered. And she's a conservative voter. Who do you know? Who's in your now? Who's in your circle of influence that's in your now that may not have voted? Don't take it for granted. Just because people talk about, I'm conservative, people tell me they voted for me. They said, hey, I went and voted, I voted for you. And I say, thank you, but I know they didn't because I'm not on the ballot right now. And I like the sentiment, but make sure, don't take anything for granted. The people you know, make sure those people that are part of your now, call them, text them, remind them. And we've got to do that in Texas, but you've got family members out of state too. And we are at a crossroads. Liberty is on the line. It's not the first time, and it won't be the last time. But it does not change that it is this time. It is on the line. You're now, you're new. Who's someone else that maybe you don't know very well that you could reach out to? Who's someone you're mentoring? Who's a new neighbor? Maybe you've been thinking, but they're from California. Well, you never know, okay? Maybe don't talk to the Dallas County new person. Go talk to the California person. Who's new in your circle that you could reach out to? Think about that just for a minute. Who is that? And then the last word is next. Who's your next? Who could you know? Who could you know? Who could you reach out to? Maybe it's making a call to your church and saying, we need to remind everyone Sunday to go vote. Maybe it's some other group that you're part of. Maybe it is your social media. Maybe it's time for you to start an Instagram account too. Maybe it's time, maybe you do a Twitter. Maybe you reach out and do something that you haven't done yet. It's your next. But it's so important that you take advantage of your now, of your new, and of your next. That's your influence. And you've done your part. And now it's time to activate that ripple effect. So that my little grandbaby can grow up in a red Texas. So that your children, your grandchildren, can continue to enjoy the fruit of what happens when we live under the rule of law. Not rule by law. That's what we'll get. Rule by law. Every little thing you can even imagine is going to be regulated. Rule by law. We don't want that. Rule of law. The law we determine together, that we vote on, that we choose to live under, that we can change, and that's applied fairly. Applied fairly. Not decided if it's fair by our judicial system. And it's executed upon by our executive branch. Thank you, Heritage Ranch. Thank you for keeping liberty alive right here, and for being those dominoes that just go out and out and out, and for being an influence to the generations in your family and to your neighbors, to make the difference, to keep Texas red. God bless you. God bless Texas.
Rolling.
Thank you, Angela. Appreciate that. Thank you all our speakers. As we move on to our next part of our program, I'd like to beg your indulgence. I meant to address this earlier this evening, but trying to get everything. I've gotten word today that one of our members, in fact, one of the ladies who have found this club is extremely ill. BJ Carew, who was planning on coming to this dinner this evening, is very, very ill. So if you get the time, stop and say a prayer for her, send her a get well card, just, give her a call, wish her her health. But she was very, very instrumental. Those of you who do not know BJ personally, you would always see her at the entrance where people were signing in. She generally had a glitter hat on, but she never had a down day. All right, even after her husband Jimmy had passed away, she continued to be here and continued to contribute. So again, think about her. And we've had 3 other members of ours pass this last month. So again, if you'd please keep them in your prayers, and let us hope that everybody stays healthy. Okay? What I'd like to do now is to have Ben come up, please. And Ben is our statistician, all right? If I ever need stats and ever need information, I can ask Ben and be sure to get them correctly. So Ben's going to go over our voting stats.
I'm going to ask Justice Brown if I can borrow his cell phone. He's got all the latest information. This was as of Sunday, through Saturday or Sunday. Heritage Ranch has done very well. I said a long time ago this election was coming early, and it did to Heritage Ranch. But there's still about 390 folks at Heritage Ranch that have not voted. And if you are one of those, please vote. If you know of someone that hasn't, please take Senator Paxton's advice and encourage them and drag them to the polls. We need them to vote. But it's been an interesting time. There are 3 more days this week to vote, and then Election Day. And then we get to celebrate. And I think that may lead into one of your next slides, Ted. Gosh, we're going to have an election night watch party in Collin County. It's over in Frisco at the Verona Villa. This is a meeting, wedding place where you can go and have a wedding, a big party. But it's on the corner of Stonebrook and the Dallas North Toll Road. You can get on the toll road and you'll be there in about 25 minutes, and you can do that. Get there about 8 o'clock if you're going to come and stay the night. I think we'll get Collin County settled fairly quickly, because I think the early vote in Collin County is going to be very significant. Maybe 75% of the electorate will have voted in Collin County early this time. Also, we're going to have a victory meeting here. Joan mentioned it earlier, on the 16th of November. We already know one speaker who's coming from to talk about the Electoral College and and the undercurrents there nationwide to undermine the Electoral College. But secondly, we don't know this yet. We hope to have Alan West here or Cat Parks here. Cat is our vice chair, or Alan here. We don't have that confirmed yet, so don't go tell anybody. We'll let you know when we know that they'll be coming. So, and then we will get into some of the behind the scenes numbers when we get all the numbers in at the end of the election cycle. Some of the things that you don't normally see in the way it results. I would like to know the outcome of the election right now. I have been tracking Heritage Ranch voters. We're doing quite well, folks. And we still need that 390 to show up so that we can do the same thing we did in this election that we did in 2018 for Senator Paxton's election. Our goal is 1,200 net Republican votes out of Heritage Ranch. That's a significant number, even in the state of Texas, to be that heavily weighted Republican. And we can offset a lot of Dallas County if we do that. So I'll stop talking, and Ted, you're going to come finish us out?
Just to reiterate what Dennis said, I mean, and what Senator Paxton said. The people in this room, I'm sure, voted. It has been my experience that has always told me that our influence goes far beyond Heritage Ranch. And if we can get 1,200 net votes out of Heritage Ranch for the Republican candidates, I'm sure we can extrapolate that by 4 or 5 more. Okay, so if we do that, let's just say we do it by 5, that's 6,000 Republican votes. Think about that. Think about your children, think about your grandchildren. Think of how much influence you have over them, or how much influence you can have over them. So we find that extremely important. We want to keep coming about all the events that are coming on. For those of you who've gone to our website, we continuously refresh the website. Georgina Fosak does a great job on continuing to post interesting articles there. Ben managed to gather the articles. She manages to post them, make sure that they're there. Clayton Barnes makes sure that Bill McClure, the emails all get out on time. So please continue to go to our website. Please continue to look forward to our email systems as well. Early voting, as Ben had mentioned, will continue through October 30th. If there are any of your neighbors who haven't voted yet, please, I would highly encourage them to early vote. It is anticipated that the lines on voting day will be very long. Right now, you can drive up to the schoolhouse, or you can drive up. We generally, if we're going to vote early, we'll end up at the City of Allen, Town Hall. My wife and I like to vote by mail. That's worked out extremely well for us. And for those of you who've done that, I'm sure that you've shared your experience with everybody else. So please get out and vote. We are really voting for our way of life today. If you look at Portland, if you look at Seattle, if you look at St. Louis, if you look at all of these states, right, and all the civil disruption that's going on, I mean, we didn't have these in the 60s and 70s. This is outrageous. And I don't know, there's a number of individuals in this room who've served their country in the military. If you would have told me 10 years ago that we would have had the Communist Party of the United States or the Nazi Party of the United States, I would have laughed you off the street. I wish, if any of you can explain to me how we've created a generation of individuals who can believe in those kind of principles and still want to be in this country. You talk to individuals who come to this country. Angela mentioned earlier about coming to Texas. I've been in Texas since 1973. Right? I would say it's almost longer than Angela's been alive. Right? But to that point, I mean, if you look at individuals who have migrated to this country from overseas, from those kinds of countries, right? Look at Tom Novak. Look at Ronald Feldman. Right? They come from different countries where these kinds of governments existed. Talk to them. I mean, it's incomprehensible to them. It really is. And it's the squeaky wheel that gets all the play. I mean, you don't see the conservatives jumping up and down, firebombing buildings and houses and shooting police. This is insanity. So again, I would ask you to please talk to your children, your grandchildren, get them on the boat. Remember, our conservative way of life is really on the line. So I'd like to thank all the speakers. I'd like to thank you all for joining us this evening. And let's keep America, life, and liberty alive, please. Thank you.